Flicker, flicker. Am I right, guys? What's up? It's the Midnight Chronicler bringing to you guys a brand new book review. Once again, we're looking at the Wheel of Time, everybody. You love the series. I love the series so far. Really enjoying it. Man, this is some fun fantasy to read here, guys. And we have book number 2, The Great Hunt. If you've already read the book, you know how great this is. If you haven't read the book yet, buckle up. Hopefully this review sells you on it. And for your own good, go ahead and stay buckled because The Great Hunt is an adventurous joyride from beginning to end. Now, when looking at the Wheel of Time as a whole, all 14 or 15 books, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone in the fandom that wouldn't put The Great Hunt in their top 3. Being very new to the fandom myself, I heard that sentiment over and over. The Great Hunt, it's one of the best. It is the best one. It's top 3. It's top 2. It's right up there with Shadow Rising. All right, everyone. Calm down. I'll let the book do the talking. And what it had to say was loud and clear. It's an adventure filled with some of the highest highs and barely any lows to speak of. Just to get a quick but not insignificant point out of the way, The Great Hunt is superior, in my opinion, to The Eye of the World. And I really enjoy The Eye of the World. I'd go so far as to say The Great Hunt is like the Empire Strikes Back to The Eye of the World's Star Wars, which, if you don't know, that's a very high recommendation, but it really does expand the world of the Wheel of Time, and it introduces new wrinkles and enemies and several memorable characters. And The Great Hunt has something that, as I'm kind of reading more into the series, is pretty critically important to the success of a Wheel of Time book. And that is which characters you follow in the book. So now, I don't know a ton about many of the sequels to the Wheel of Time, but I know as you kind of move forward, the way that the characters are grouped are pretty critically important to how well that book's going to be received. Just the cast is so huge in these books, and the quality of the characters, understandably, does vary a good bit. Thankfully, with The Great Hunt, though, you follow some of the best for a long time. One of my favorite sections in the book includes Rand and Loyal. The mix of Rand's young, foolish bravery and Loyal's wise but timid nature is a dynamic that never failed to entertain and brings up a lot of hilarious moments. The duo is also followed by my favorite new character. This guy is named Hurin. He's known as the Sniffer, who has a knack for smelling when violence is near or when violence had happened to an area and is gone. It's kind of a very underrated and neat power, and I really enjoyed that character. And the alternate realm in which that trio wanders in is where the Wheel of Time really started to flirt with the fantastical, and I loved it. The Great Hunt really did a good job of taking the reader to different areas than we went to in the first book and making them, like I mentioned, much more fantastical and interesting, and really kind of let my imagination flow. Speaking of the fantastical, Rand's use of the One Power really takes shape when they enter this alternate world, and the ape-like enemy creatures that serve as good fodder for him to show off some of his abilities. And this is a book where I think Rand's use of the power really starts to become a focal point, and he really becomes used to his abilities and how they're able to help him and the cast get out of situations, solve puzzles, or attack the enemies. It really becomes a fun thing to begin to read about and learn more. I feel like you're growing up with Rand with these powers. And obviously, based on the title, you can probably tell that the characters are hunting for something. In this case, they're hunting for a horn that will summon a great legendary army that will help the main characters to bring prosperity back to the world. And in general, the hunt for this horn is a pure adventure from the start all the way to the finish. The cities traveled, the character trials that they go through, the new enemies that awaken in this book make it far superior to The Eye of the World. And like I said, really expands and unfolds the world in a delightful way. And if I had to summarize this book, guys, in a really simplistic way, it would be like this. Battles, treasure hunt, a pinch of Harry Potter, and more battles. Yeah, really. It's got a little bit of Harry Potter. Or should I say, Harry Potter has a little bit of Wheel of Time, since Wheel of Time came first. Either way, it's epic, it's awesome, and it just brings more flair to the story. One of the biggest new stars of the book for me was the city of Tarvalon. This is where the Aes Sedai women go to basically their version of Hogwarts, and they get to train and hone their powers and their skills with weaving the one power. And the trials that some of the main characters go through in this section are fan-freaking-tastic. The level of imagination and talent in Robert Jordan's writing of this section in particular was astounding, and it was a freaking blast to read this part. And I must say, even though that may have been my favorite part of the book, it still kind of revolved around some of my least favorite characters, but it was so good that I have to give them their flowers for that part. And speaking of new enemies, a certain really, really big important enemy gets introduced in this book, an entire faction of seafaring enemies that come onto the land, and they have very, very barbaric methods, even slavery type methods. Several of the women in this book go through some serious crap, and they came out with some of the most epic moments in the book. If you've read it, you know what I'm referring to, and it makes for some of the funnest reading I've had in a long time. They get some sweet revenge in this book. And that part of the book makes for some really satisfying payback that is super entertaining to read. And in general, guys, the Wheel of Time is undefeated when it comes to mileage, and the lands traveled in this book are vast and full of wonder. All the cities that you go to, all the characters that you meet, all the mysteries that somewhat unravel and stay raveled in their own kind of unique and tempting way that just keeps you reading throughout the entire thing, and could not stop me from moving on to book 3. It's, again, so very imaginative, and The Great Hunt does a masterful job of guiding the reader's imagination like only Robert Jordan can. Even if his detail along the way becomes kind of painstaking and long-winded, it never quite overstays its welcome, but there are times where The Great Hunt, like all Wheel of Time books, can get a little wordy in sections. But it all kind of culminates to an ending that is so strong that I have serious doubts that any other book in the series will touch it. The escape, the battle, the glory at the end, it all comes together in a memorable crescendo that almost feels like it strangely could serve as a complete and satisfying ending, although it is not. Obviously, this is only book 2 of a 14/15 book series. We are very far away from the end, but it is awesome and maybe a little bit worrying to me that the series kind of is just from the eye of the world on such an upward trajectory that I'm really loving the Great Hunt. And then we kind of go into the Dragon Reborn after that for book 3, that I'm sort of worried that we're reaching such high highs that it feels like we almost have nowhere to go but down at this point. So the slog that I know comes toward the middle of the series, the anticipation for the slog is really kind of wearing on me, and I'm hoping that when the time comes that I get through it okay and it's not too much of a drag. But yeah, like I said, this book is a solid beginning, middle, and end just on its own. It could be its own contained story. It really is, even though it's a part of a much bigger story, but it honestly could serve as a satisfying ending. But as we all know, the Wheel of Time still turns.